India has drawn the wrath of the International Olympic Association after Pakistani shooters were denied visas for the World Cup in New Delhi. The IOC has decided to, and I quote, suspend all discussions with India over hosting global sporting events. In a statement, the IOC has said, and I quote again, this situation goes against the fundamental principles of the Olympic Charter, unquote, and the principles of non-discrimination have been violated. With the IOC snapping talks with India, the future of upcoming sporting events in India, like the hockey Olympic qualifiers this year and the 2021 World Boxing Championship, is now uncertain. That's not all. 3 Indian shooters participating in the current World Championships are now at a disadvantage. The participants of the men's 25-meter rapid-fire event will not be able to book their places for the upcoming Olympics. That quota has been withdrawn because Pakistani athletes are not participating. Separately, the Cricket World Cup clash between the two nations is also facing uncertainty. The BCCI seems to have put the onus on the government of India for a decision on what to do with the clash with Pakistan later in the year in England. The big question we're asking today is politics over sports a double-edged sword? Do we need to keep the long-term implications of our response in mind, because they do have unintended consequences? Joining us now, a panel of eminent experts: Murad Ali Khan, ace India shooter and gold medalist at the 2003 Commonwealth Games; Ronak Pandit, the coach and husband of Indian shooter Hina Sidhu; Ayaz Memon, resident sports commentator; and Gaurav Kalra, sports editor here at Network 18. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Gaurav, I want to start by asking you, a lot of the discussion and TV time has been spent talking about the BCCI's response to the ICC for the upcoming World Cup and whether Pakistan should be boycotted or not. But leave that aside. Let's focus first on what the IOC is saying and how damaging this statement is for India's aspirations going forward.
Well, Shireen, it will be, because unlike the ICC, where the BCCI still enjoys a lot of clout when it comes to the IOC and when it comes to international sport, that sort of clout does not exist. So India is still, in a sense, trying to emerge as a destination for not just as a sporting power in a sense, but also as a destination for international sport to pay regular visits here. If India wants to, going forward in the future, wants to host, for let's say, an Olympic Games or an Asian Games coming up next, things of that nature, then they need to show proof of concept, and that's only by hosting high-profile events here in India. This has already been a blow. The fact that these Pakistan shooters are not able to come to India means that, as a direct result, there is suspicion now about whether India can host events of this kind going forward without hitches of this nature, and unless there is a fair field. Now, let's be honest here, Shireen, these Pakistan shooters, even if they had come, they would not have qualified for these quota places. But that's not the point of discussion at all. The point is, it is not a fair. If the fair field is not on offer for an Olympic sport event to take place, then that world body withdraws your right to host them.
That is the view there of the IOC, which demands a fair playing field. But let me go across to Ronak Pandit, the coach for Arjuna awardee Hina Sidhu. Ronak, thanks very much for joining us. And I know you have limited time, so let me very quickly ask you about how the sporting community is seeing the development today. The IOC has asked the Indian government to give a written assurance that they will, in fact, provide a non-discriminatory environment. We haven't heard from the Indian government so far. But how is the statement that's coming from the IOC being viewed by the sporting community and by the shooting community in specific?
Yeah, hi. See, I think this is an unprecedented and a very peculiar situation. I mean, it goes without saying, everyone concerned with sports has to accept the decision of the IOC, and one can understand the need for IOC to stick to its rules as well. However, having said that, what happened with us was a terrible event, and as a country we stand united and the nation comes first. Pakistani athletes have competed in India before, so it's not like we always do it. I sincerely hope that we are able to make the IOC see the reason behind the denial this time. India is probably, we're one of the most diverse countries in the world, and I can only hope that the IOC does not generalize it and sees this incident where the visa was not issued as a rare event. And keeping in mind the contribution and emergence of India in the world of sports, we just have to look at the bigger picture ahead. And finally, we are just glad that and thankful to the IOC for understanding and still allowing the 14 of the 16 quotas in the shooting World Cup event, because a lot of the shooters from across the world have come here, and a lot of them have limited resources. And stripping this competition of the quotas would have been very unfair on a lot of the athletes across the world. So I think we just have to see the emergence of India in the world of sports and the contribution of India in general, and not isolate and tag India as having political interference in the field of sports. I don't think we do that.
Let me take that point forward, because I think you raise a valid issue there. Let me go across to Murad Ali and also get Ayaz Menon to comment on that. The point being raised here by Ronak Pandit is that India is a diverse nation. We have contributed to the world of sport, and we want to contribute to the world of sport going forward. This was an exceptional situation. This was a dastardly terrorist attack which involved the killing of 44 CRPF personnel, and hence this is India's position at this point in time. Do you believe, Murad Ali Khan, that the IOC should consider making this an exception?
The IOC will never make an exception. They have never done that in the past, and they will not do it in the future, because they cannot change the Olympic Charter for whatever reasons. But having said that, in our case, especially now, at this juncture, I think the nation comes first. The competitions can wait. I mean, this is not the only competition where these athletes will have the option of winning the quota places. There will be many other competitions where the athletes in 25-meter rapid fire pistol can get a chance or will have a chance to win the quota places. It is unfortunate that here they will not be able to compete because they were ready, and as I know from the coaches yesterday when I was talking to them, they're actually in a very good shape to win the quota place. And this particular incident now, I mean, the athletes will be disappointed. But at the same time, I think that will give them enough reason to continue with their practice and the form and go and take part in the next World Cup and win a quota place. Pakistan as such has never actually not been sending shooters to any of the World Cups. In my, I think, entire career of 14 years that I have represented the country, I don't remember more than 3 or 4 times that the Pakistan team was there at any of the competitions. Now, just making an issue out of this is something which nobody can can hold them for. I mean, nobody can tell them that you don't do that, because they took this as an opportunity and made sure that they retaliated in some way or the other. And the result is that India today stands banned from hosting any of the international competitions, or forget about hosting, even discussing any international competitions, till such time that the government gives an undertaking that they can host, they will not discriminate between nations. But at this point of time, I think it is a question of country first. I think the quotas can wait for one more championship.
Okay, the quotas can wait for one more championship. Ronak Pandit and Murad Ali here, the sports people on the panel very clearly exhibiting, taking one for the team, and that's the spirit that sports people believe in. But Ayaz Menon, to take the point forward, because as both Murad as well as Ronak and Gaurav were talking about, that this does have long-term implications. And let's be clear, the IOC is not going to change the Olympic Charter, even if India were to raise its concerns on the IOC's statement that was issued today. But what should the Indian response now be to ensure that we in fact don't face the kind of isolation that we probably are heading towards?
Well, I think Murad mentioned that, the IOC will never be convinced. And that I think is, and I think Ronak will agree. You see, the point is, the IOC Charter, we are all signatories to it, including India. And the Charter says that there will be non-discrimination against athletes from other countries. I think the whole idea of the IOC Charter is that, the human race is riven with strife. Nation states sometimes are at loggerheads, sometimes at war. And how do you keep sports exempt from that? That broadly is the purpose of the Charter. Now, if you take a position that, we will not give visas to athletes or shooters from Pakistan, that is in violation of the Charter. Now, how well the government of India or the IOA can convince the IOC remains to be seen, but it is, in my opinion, is going to be extremely difficult. And not just that, because then what, for instance, if you're going to have the Youth Olympics here, are you going to invite athletes from Pakistan or not? Yeah. And if you're not, then that again will violate the IOC Charter. You know, I'm saying that it's like a minefield. When you unravel the process, then it becomes a minefield. So the government of India and the IOA have to really think this through hard, use all their powers to convince them why the visas was not given, and then take it from there.
Ronak Pandit, before I let you go, so what is it that you would like to see going forward? Because, you know, while both you and Murad have said that it's fine given the current context and the current situation, you know, it's okay for sports people to wait and try their luck next time around. But, you know, this will have long-term implications that will impact scores of people who have spent their blood, sweat and tears trying to make it to the Olympic level. So what is it that you would like to see now in terms of a response going forward?
Yeah, you know, I think we are all athletes and we all have put in a lot of hard work into winning the Olympic quota and the ultimate Olympic glory for the country. But I think in this moment, we also have to stand united as a nation, because what happened with us, I mean, we are victims here. What happened to the families of those 40-plus soldiers, we cannot just let that go. And I am not in favor of denying any country the right or the free the entry to India for sports or culture or any other reasons. It's not that I'm thinking. What I'm thinking is right now, it's just too fresh. It just happened 1 week earlier. And I think it's understandable if, due to whatever reasons, the government has decided to not to deny the visa to these countries. And that's what I'm saying, that India as a nation cannot be branded as an anti-sports or a politically interfering nation. It's just that this situation is just too fresh. We are at the,
But that's the fair point that you make, that the situation is fresh. But to Ayaz's point, that the IOC, bound by the Charter, is unlikely to make exceptions, because if they make an exception in the case of India, which may be a valid exception, they will then be forced to take that precedent forward in other cases as well.
Yes, it's like opening the Pandora's box, and then everyone will have valid reasons for it. We understand. But what can be done? I mean, it's a baffling situation right now. And for me, in this moment, the sentiments of the nation comes first. And I think it's a matter of, it's now on the onus is on the IOA and the government to really build up a strong case and to show to the IO, to convince the IOC that India is a country with open arms, and we invite and we take care of athletes and everybody from the world, and do not brand us as, politically interfering nation in the field of sports.
Well, we still are awaiting a response from the government as far as this issue is concerned, and how they intend to respond to the IOC. But let me move to the other issue and get each of our panelists to comment on what we've heard from the BCCI. The BCCI, in its letter to the ICC, has stated that in view of the terrorist attack, the BCCI fears for the safety and security of players and match officials participating in the upcoming ICC events, including the World Cup. Most countries from which the ICC members hail have strongly condemned the terror attack. The BCCI urges the cricket community to sever ties with countries from which terrorism emanates. I asked to Gaurav Kalra's point that we have more, perhaps, at stake when it comes to the ICC, and perhaps much more influence when it comes to the ICC, the BCCI. Do you believe that this could be different from our negotiations that could happen with the IOC? Ayaz?
Yeah, so look, I think the issue is, already where the bilateral, cricketing ties are concerned, India and Pakistan haven't been playing. India has taken a position. They don't want to engage Pakistan in bilateral tournaments at all. So that's been the case for the last 5-6 years. And, obviously that will continue. The whole issue of whether India should participate in the World Cup or play Pakistan in the World Cup, or should they boycott? To me, I think one has to look at what the objective is. The objective is to punish Pakistan materially or otherwise. By not participating or not playing against Pakistan in the World Cup, you're not affecting them materially in any way. What you're affecting is the tournament, the World Cup tournament. And, there's no punitive fine. It's not that Pakistan will lose money or whatever else. I'm not interested whether the points will come to India or Pakistan. That's not the point. The point is that you're I think there are other ways of doing it. Today we've had the UNSC, United Nations Security Council statement coming and identifying Jaish-e-Mohammed, including backed by China. These are the measures that need to be done, put pressure on Pakistan. Why make cricket the sacrificial goat, so to speak, that, oh, but you know, there are other sports that we play, there are other things that we do. I mentioned somewhere there might be a conclave of writers, where people from India and Pakistan are invited to speak. Will you say that our writers should not go there? I mean, you know, I think that one has to be a little calibrated about what we are doing, why we are doing it, and what is the objective to be achieved.
Let me take that to Murad. Murad, you know, the point that is being made there by Ayaz Menon, that we need to have a calibrated response because the unintended consequences will have serious implications and long-term damages for India's aspirations as a sporting nation. Forget the fact that, as he pointed out, you know, whether they get 2 points or not, or whether we get to play them in the ICC World Cup, even that decision has yet to be taken by the government. The BCCI has left it to the government to make that decision. But eventually, are we really punishing Pakistan is the question. If that is the objective, are we then delivering on that objective?
I think what my point of view in this particular case will be very, very straightforward answer. We should not invite Pakistan to play in India. We should not go to Pakistan to take part in any tournament. But as far as any other country is hosting a championship and we are in a situation that we have to take part, I mean we have to participate and compete against Pakistan, I think we should go ahead and do it. Because we should not give them the opportunity to come to India and we host them. Or we go there and they host us. Let's forget about all that. But in a different country, yes, by all means we should play. Even in cricket, if the tournament is in a different country we are playing, we should go and play it. We should not withdraw our teams because ultimately it's not only, we are not punishing them in any way. We are punishing our own team, we are punishing our own spectators, we are punishing everybody. So when we go there and participate in a different country, I think that's perfectly fine with us.
Okay, Ronak, would you agree with what you've heard there from both Ayaz as well as Murad, that, you know, when it comes to things like the Cricket World Cup, which is happening, for instance, in London this time around, in UK, you know, it doesn't help for India to not play Pakistan. It doesn't end up punishing Pakistan. If anything, it helps aiding them.
Yes, absolutely, because I think right now emotions are taking the better of logic, and we will just have to, you know, like Kaya said, we just have to be very clear of what the objectives are and how we are going to achieve those objectives. So it would be silly to, you know, like for example, I just read one of the statements by Sachin Tendulkar that it would be sad to see Pakistan just win those 2 points. You know, if we don't play them. So yeah, I mean, it's impossible to host or be hosted. But if we are in a different country, why not? I think the biggest punishment would be to show them where we are in the field of sports and where they are.
Well, Gaurav, you know, you've been following the story now. The BCCI has sent this letter to the ICC, and of course, they're awaiting the government's response as well on whether we should go ahead with playing Pakistan in the World Cup. But what are you picking up on this story in specific?
Well, I think this decision was never going to be made at the level of the BCCI, Shireen. I think that was very clear. This was a little bit of white noise around, you know, just talking about what the BCCI's position can be and whether they can actually harden their stance. I don't think they were ever going to be in a position from where they were going to make a decision. In fact, if you just think back to the context of this, Shireen, why when India and Pakistan haven't played bilateral cricket over the years, Pakistan actually took India to an arbitration proceeding in the ICC. The claim in that arbitration proceeding by Pakistan was that because India has denied us these 3 series as they promised earlier, our television rights value has fallen, and as a result we've suffered financial losses and those should be compensated. That claim was actually thrown out at the ICC arbitration level because the BCCI successfully argued that the government of India actually prohibits them from indulging in bilateral series against Pakistan. Now, the government at this stage has to make the same decision about this clash in the World Cup, because when it comes to the tournament itself, make no mistake, Shireen, it will not be a convenient situation for India to just give up on these 2 points. India is actually playing their 4th match of the tournament against Pakistan, and they're playing South Africa, Australia and New Zealand before that. Just imagine a scenario, Shireen, 10 teams, only 4 get through to the semi-finals. India lose the first two of the first 3 games. It can happen because they're playing strong teams, reach a game against Pakistan in a must-win situation, and what do they have to do? They have to forfeit that game. So there go 2 more points, and then they're left with the rest of the tournament to try and make up that difference. It is a very difficult situation to be in a World Cup scenario. Also, Shireen, they get to that point of a semi-final or a final. What do? A World Cup final, the greatest moment in a sportsman's time as a professional sportsman, and he's asked to then stand down from that final because of a government decision. I don't know how that's going to go down.
Murad, you wanted to make a point.
Yeah, I wanted to make a point that, just by skipping a qualifying match doesn't mean anything, because ultimately you got to win the World Cup. So even in semi-finals or the finals, if the clash is against Pakistan, you got to play. You cannot withdraw and just walk off and not win the World Cup. I mean, this is going to have wider repercussions. We cannot do that.
Yes, in fact, Shireen, if I can just come in for 20 seconds here.
Absolutely, that was
there is a precedent.
Go ahead.
There is precedent to this. 2003. 2 teams, Australia as well, in 2003, 2 teams refused to tour Kenya, New Zealand and England, Kenya and Zimbabwe. As a direct result of that, those 2 teams suffered in the way they progressed in the tournament. These are round-robin stages. Every game matters. In 1996, the West Indies and Australia refused to tour Sri Lanka because of security. And all of those times were security concerns, what you could legitimately define as a problematic situation. In this case, India is not going to have a very strong wicket to stand on, because what is the security concern? The entire tournament is in England, so if it's bad security for one team, it's bad security for the others as well.
Yes, and the BCCI letter does not name Pakistan specifically. It talks about security concerns. I ask very quickly, final say from you.
Yes, I just wanted to highlight that we have, in fact, in the past, forfeited a final. This was the Davis Cup final in 1974, because India had reached the final and were to play South Africa. Now, South Africa in those days was, still under the shadow or the ignominy of apartheid. So India, which didn't have diplomatic relations with South Africa, abstained. They forfeited the final. The point is, if you have no diplomatic relations at all, none whatsoever, you could have taken that step. It didn't go down well with the tennis aficionados then, nor the players. But today, to say that we should take action only where cricket is concerned, so many other sports we are still playing, our diplomatic channels with Pakistan, they may be strained, but they are still open, I think is a little, it's stretching things a little too far.
Okay, final words from each of you. Ronak Pandit, I'll give you the final say. Ayaz Menon's point is that let's put pressure diplomatically. Let's continue to put pressure when it comes to the UN Security Council, build a coalition of global partners in this battle against terror in general and Pakistan in specific. Leave sport out of it. Ronak.
Your voice wasn't clear. I couldn't hear you.
Well, we seem... the point that I was trying to make, Ayaz Menon's parting comments on the program that, look, use diplomatic channels, use an international coalition of partners to put pressure on Pakistan, to put pressure on Pakistan specifically when it comes to the war against terror, but let's separate sport from diplomacy and the other avenues that we can leverage and exercise.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we'll have to eventually keep sports and politics different, let the government do its job. And I think as sports persons, we can only just prepare well and just hope to, bring pride to the globe, pride to the country by just performing well.
Well, that is all that is in your control. Ronak Pandit, thanks very much for joining us. Murad Ali, final comment from you before I close the program.
I think we should participate and let Pakistan also participate, beat them at every championship, every sport that we play in, so that they don't have a chance to say that, you know, they have beaten India in anything.
India today claimed a diplomatic victory over Pakistan after the 15-member UN Security Council strongly condemned the Pulwama attacks and even named the Jaish-e-Mohammed. Sources say India had specifically worked towards naming the Jaish-e-Mohammed in the resolution. China, though, says the UNSC statement is generally worded and does not pass a judgment on the Pulwama attacks. What's also a matter of concern for India is that, according to sources, China was the only country which tried to derail and delay the UNSC resolution on Pulwama attacks. Will this really put pressure on Pakistan, the entire UNSC resolution? The second big development of the day, Pakistan today managed to get some reprieve at the Financial Action Task Force in Paris. The country managed to avoid being blacklisted for its poor record in fighting money laundering and terror financing. The FATF has put Pakistan on notice till October and has said that the country has not done enough to stop terror financing of groups like the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the Lashkar-e-Toiba. Is hurting a cash-strapped Pakistan economically India's best option? Let's go across to our guests now. Let's take this forward with them. We're joined by former Foreign Secretary Shashank in our studios in New Delhi. Vishnu Prakash, former ambassador to Canada, former spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs, is also joining us. We have with us C. Uday Bhaskar, who is the director of Society for Policy Studies. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on this discussion. Mr. Shashank, I'd like to begin with you first. Keeping the resolution in mind, it seems that the Indian diplomats have been working very hard towards this. Do you think this is going to put some pressure on Pakistan?
Well, both things are correct. One is that it is a question of Pakistan supporting funding terrorist activities from within its soil. So it has got isolated. No country these days wants to support terrorism of any kind. And you know, the immediate neighbors of Pakistan, that is India, Afghanistan and Iran, have complained that simultaneously attacks were mounted in their countries against the security forces. And they were all sponsored from Pakistan. And most of them said that Pakistan army was involved. Therefore, they have not received any support from there. And second point, of course, you are quite right. The Indian diplomats worked extremely hard. And whatever drafts were proposed by the Indian side were accepted more or less as it is by the Security Council members.
14 to 15.
So, well, you're quite right, because China did try to delay the whole process. But they have always been raising these procedural points, and they're a permanent member of the Security Council. One wants to take them along with you, with them. The point also remains that Security Council these days wants to have complete consensus on its resolutions, so that they can be more effective.
Right.
So therefore, it is good that the Chinese ultimately came along.
Right. They ultimately came along. It took about a week, and it's important to note that India has also been pushing for UN Security Council reform. Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, if I can get you in at this stage, mentioning JEM, the Jaish-e-Mohammed, in the UNSC resolution, do you think that's a significant step? Do you think that's unprecedented? Why does this matter diplomatically?
Well, it is a significant step. It's the first time ever that the UN Security Council has adopted a statement condemning an attack or attacks on Indian security forces. I think that is significant. The very fact that 14 out of 15 members of the UN Security Council were unanimous in strongly condemning the suicide bombing in Jammu and Kashmir, for which Lashkar-e-Taiba has, for which Jaish-e-Mohammed has claimed responsibility, is significant. And this is also significant because France has now decided or offered to move a resolution in the UN Security Council. It will be the fourth time that such an effort will be made to declare Masood Azhar and Jaish-e-Mohammed as a terrorist and a terror organization. So yes, it's a positive development, but we have to take note that our adversary China is up to its usual games. They tried very hard to have the statement diluted, watered down. They wanted Pakistan or India occupied Kashmir, quote unquote, to be substituted for Jammu and Kashmir, and resisted the mention of Jaish-e-Mohammed. So we have to, there is no surprise, but we need to know, we need to factor in that China will not make it easy for us, that China will continue to protect the interests of Pakistan, because Pakistan has been a proxy of China. Will not.
Okay, let me get in Commodore Uday Bhaskar at this point. Commodore Bhaskar, it seems that China was the only country. Foreign Secretary Shashank, also Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, saying that China was the only country which tried to delay and derail India's move. Do you think China only succumbed to international pressure because there were 14 members who were ready to pass this resolution on the 15th of February itself? China couldn't delay it beyond a certain point, but their perception about Pakistan hasn't changed at all.
Well, I would say that instead of the word succumbed to international pressure, my own reading is that China chose not to reject or be indifferent to the current global support as far as India is concerned in terms of the condemnation of the Pulwama incident. Because I think it's very interesting, just to extend the point made by both the ambassadors Shashank and Vishnu Prakash. If you look at how China has conducted itself in global fora, where there was a critical decision that would impact India's interests, we saw this in relation to the nuclear suppliers group in 2008. If you remember, when the United States was pushing the NSG to accord that exceptional status to India, China tried whatever it could to try and get a few countries to oppose what the United States had proposed. And finally, in the last 24 hours, this is what our diplomats have now shared with us, when they read the writing on the wall, as it were, China went along with the consensus. So even in this case, you know, what is very instructive for me is that in the UNSC, I'm sure the Chinese PR or the Chinese diplomats would have got a sense about the global mood. And therefore, they tried very hard, and as my other guests have mentioned, they tried to water down, use different words and so on. But this, I think, is cause for satisfaction for India. But more importantly, I think, is the Financial Action Task Force.
Okay.
Because if you read the subtext over there, I was very struck by the fact that before the meeting was conducted, the members stood up in silence to pay tribute to what happened in Pulwama and the fact that we lost 41 Jawans of the CRPF. So that again is a very strong expression of solidarity. And I'm sure that the Chinese rep at the FATF would have compared notes both with headquarters in Beijing and with the Chinese rep in the PR in New York, where the UNSC is meeting. And therefore, I think China has modified its position. But it's not the kind of country that would succumb. You know,
modified
its
position.
So I expect that for India, it's going to be a long haul in terms of prevailing upon China not to provide such uncritical support to Pakistan in relation to terrorism. That's my take.
Right. I'll get Mr. Shashank in at this point. Mr. Shashank, as Commodore Bhaskar was also pointing out, it's still a long way off. What do you think will be the next diplomatic campaign for India? Will it be the 1267 committee? And do you think this international pressure will work on China?
You know, what has happened in the meantime, since China opposed Masood Azhar's being named as a terrorist, they wanted more time to be given. They wanted more consultations between India and Pakistan. They have put behind bars about 10 lakh of their Uyghurs for terrorist-related type of crimes or other activities which are prejudicial to the state security. And there is a very bad image which China has created. Secondly, China knows that Pakistan has become a hotbed for terrorist training, financing, etc. For terrorists, even against China. In fact, in some cases, they are trying to talk directly to these terrorists in order to find out how they can somehow safeguard China. Second is that China is trying to even work with India in stabilizing Afghanistan. Pakistan is the country which is trying to destabilize Afghanistan. So China has a difficult task ahead on its hands, that how to keep its all-weather friend Pakistan on the right side, which has already handed over its territories like Balochistan.
Okay.
Pakistan occupied Kashmir, Gilgit, Baltistan, for China to control as a kind of debt against equity type of thing.
Yeah.
So India will have to work hard. We will have to go for now the naming of the terrorists specifically, because this is a major attack which has taken place against the security forces of India, and no country can accept this lying down. So India will have to take action, and I think this present resolution does provide an enabling framework under which India and other like-minded countries can take action.
Okay, that's an important point, that this is an enabling platform that has been provided to India. Pakistan today managed to buy some time at the Financial Action Task Force in Paris. It got a reprieve. It was not put on a blacklist as India was pushing for. It remains on the grey list. It remains on the watch list till October 2019. And this is for its record on terror financing and fighting terror financing. Let's go back to our guest, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash. I'd like to come back to you. Do you think the banning of Jamaat-ud-Dawa and Falai-e-Insaniyat by the Pakistani government at the 11th hour helped it to avoid a blacklist, avoid getting blacklisted for now at the FATF?
If you permit me, before coming to the question of FATF, let me briefly comment on the previous segment of the role of China. As I see it, the China of 2008, when we got the NSG waiver, was under President Hu Jintao, who spoke of peaceful rise of China. Today, in 2009, you see a more muscular, more confrontational China under President Xi Jinping. So as Commodore Uday Bhaskar said, for us it's a long haul, and China today has the capability of going it alone and being a majority of one. So their approach will be even harder to counter than it was earlier. So that is point one. Now, as far as the FATF is concerned, I think the world has seen the true face of Pakistan. Now, LET is a proscribed organization in Pakistan, and yet LET and its affiliates have 2,500 offices and 11 seminaries. Now, how the 2,500 offices and 11 seminaries run? Of course, with a lot of money. Parikshit, I am reminded of my posting in Pakistan, when on a Friday, thousands of mosques would put out tents outside the mosques after the Friday prayers with banners asking for 10 rupees to kill an Indian. So that is the kind of work that goes on in Pakistan. That's the kind of terror financing that happens in Pakistan. And the reason FATF has decided to retain Pakistan on the grey list is that they had already been given time till October 2019 to clean up their act. And the FATF has already noted that they have not done much. FATF has kind of condemned and mourned the suicide bombing and death of 41 Indian soldiers. So I think, as far as I can see, the writing is on the wall. And unless Pakistan gets its act together, which is highly unlikely given the track record of our neighbor, I think it's it is a matter of time before the noose will start tightening around Pakistan's neck.
It's a matter of time. And Ambassador Prakash, we must tell our audience that it's not the first time that the Falai-e-Insaniyat and the Jamaat-ud-Dawa have been banned by the Interior Ministry of Pakistan. It's happened before. Commodore Uday Bhaskar, to get you in at this stage, do you think there's enough evidence of money laundering and terror financing in Pakistan to all these groups like the Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Lashkar-e-Toiba, all these groups linked to the Taliban? There is enough evidence available internationally?
Absolutely. You know, as far as Pakistan's money trail is concerned, it's not something new. Now that you have raised this, Parikshat, I think we need to remind ourselves that the most detailed investigation of money laundering was done when the Americans had investigated the Daniel Pearl case. Now, you may recall that there was a Wall Street journalist, Daniel Pearl, and he was abducted and killed in Pakistan by the terror groups. And at that time, when they had carried out the investigation,
that's right,
there was a terror trail of the finances that was almost 20 years old, and a Pakistani bank was implicated. It's just that most of this was deliberately kept under wraps for a variety of political reasons. But the professionals who track money laundering, and I have had occasion to speak to some of them at the international conferences, they have a lot of, shall we say, detail on the nature of the transactions. They also have identified certain individuals, but because of political considerations, these are not being put in the public domain. My reading again is that the FATF in Paris, apart from India, Pulwama, CRPF, they also have received inputs from both Iran and Afghanistan about the nature of the activities emanating from within Pakistan that come under the umbrella of the FATF for transgressions, and reasons why the listing of Pakistan could move from grey to black. Again, my sense is that the reason why Pakistan has been given this window is because of the inputs of quote-unquote well-wishers led by China and perhaps Saudi Arabia to say that do not snap this financial lifeline, because Pakistan today is in dire fiscal strait.
Very important.
And if the IMF loan does not come through and the grey listing moves to black, even the IMF would not be allowed to provide whatever support it could under the most stringent conditions also. So I think because of the fact that Pakistan being what it is and its internal
from all these financial institutions
dissonance, these well-wishers are trying to give Pakistan a window,
I'll get in
I think
Mr. Shashank at this point
that Pakistan would comply.
Pakistan would comply. And Mr. Shashank, what do you feel that India now needs to do? We have time till October to put that pressure on the FATF, to put evidence before them. How do we need to go about this?
You know, there are two parts. FATF is looking at the financing of terrorism, where Pakistan has been implicated directly, but they have been put under the grey area list, and they would be under close scrutiny for whatever they do or whether they do not do anything. Second part is that they have been giving their land to China for all their building their BRI activities. And since there are these lands have local insurgent activities, Chinese have brought in their soldiers to take care of their engineers and other people. Pakistan has also raised new battalions to provide security to the Chinese. So therefore, it is for the IMF, World Bank and other international financing institutions, even the international banks, to see are they paying Pakistan in order to put more and more territory under the control of China?
So you're saying don't just go to FATF, go to IMF as well?
We have to go everywhere. We have to make sure that it does not become Pakistan right now is a hotbed of terrorist activities and providing support to them. But on the other hand, if they go totally under the Chinese control, that will be a great risk to the security and the stability of the whole region.
The entire region.
Because we have seen that Chinese, what they are doing in South China Sea, and they would like to spread these activities elsewhere also. To Indian Ocean, to the islands and countries around the Indian Ocean.
All right. So, Joe, don't just limit it to FATF. Go to other financial institutions and global financial institutions as well. But I'll take final comments now from all our panelists, starting with you, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash. Do you think isolating Pakistan is the best option for India at this point? Isolating them economically and hurting them economically is the best option?
I would agree with you. I think time has come. We cannot have business as usual. We have to go the whole hog and employ all measures at our disposal, all means at our disposal to expose Pakistan, to isolate Pakistan and cut off Pakistan. You know, I am very disappointed at some voices that are being heard today that we should play cricket with Pakistan at the World Cup match. I would like to ask one small question. Is cricket bigger than India? We will be weakening our case if we are selective in engaging with Pakistan. We have to totally cut off Pakistan.
Okay.
We have to make sure that we stay the course, we expose Pakistan, and we use all the opportunities available, be it diplomatic, economic, military, and the trade, economic, including
and isolate them,
downgrading diplomatic relations, reviewing the Indus Water Treaty, and isolate them, expose them, and make sure.
I'm running out of time. I'll take final comments now very quickly. Okay, Commodore Uday Bhaskar, just about 20 seconds. Do you feel that hurting them economically at a time when their cash reserves have dwindled to $8 billion, this is probably the best time to build up a strong economic campaign against Pakistan?
I think so. My own reading is that while we explore multiple tracks, that the economic and financial, I think, is the most urgent, because if India is able to prevail upon the major stakeholders and get our story across, because India has a very good story, and in terms of the nature of the terror attack that Pakistan is continuously waging against India. And I think we need to tell the story in a more effective and persuasive way in the next few weeks and months, so that bodies like the FATF and other global financial institutions are able to use whatever leverages they have. And I think the signal then to Pakistan would be very clear, while we pursue whatever we can do unilaterally in relation to Pakistan, and making sure that it pays a heavier price than what it is just now in relation to the support to terrorism. Parikshit?
Okay. All right. So this panel believes that hurting Pakistan economically is the best option available to India at this juncture. Commodore Bhaskar, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, Foreign Secretary Shashank, thank you very much for joining us on this discussion.